Okay, our next presenter is Bill Murphy. Now, Bill knows more about how the price of gold is being manipulated and controlled than anybody else I've ever spoken to. And he's got volumes of supporting evidence and material. One of the things I like about I don't care whether it's a conspiracy theory or whether it's a stock pick or whatever, I'm really dedicated to sort of understanding what the facts are and getting into the proof. And what I like about Bill is, unlike a lot of the guys out there, he's got stacks and stacks and stacks of proof. Proof of which has led to lawsuits against some major investment banks and have led to big changes in the way the precious metal commodity markets work. The other thing is he was a former pro football player, and he likes to say that he's played, that every stadium he played in except for Fenway Park is no longer here. And I think you should think about that when you realize that municipalities are financing billion-dollar stadiums. It seems like a really foolish waste of money. Anyways, please welcome Bill Murphy.
Thank you, Porter.
Thanks, Bill.
Hello, everyone. Boy, times change, huh? Boy, time's gone by. But I'll tell you, it's a quick, fun story. I remember because about that change, and what some of the stuff being presented here at the conference. One of the games I was introduced at the Orange Bowl. I remember running through the goalpost. It's gone. And I was introduced a couple of weeks later at the Astrodome, which at the time was the first Astro service artificial turf in the world indoor stadium. It's gone. So it is fun, at least for me today, to still see my old park, Fenway Park, still around. It's great to be here with such an illustrious group of people in my hometown of Dallas. And I'm going to start off by saying what God is all about, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, because many of you may not know much about it. It was formed in 1999 in January by Chris Powell, an editor of a daily newspaper, the Journal-Inquirer, in Manchester, Connecticut, and myself, to expose the manipulation of the gold price. Initially, we thought it was the bullion banks, Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and so on. But as we got into it, we realized it was much bigger than that. The Fed, the Treasury, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, other central banks, and so on. And we called it the gold cartel, somewhat like T. Boone Pickens talks about the oil cartel. But contrary to how we are portrayed by many as a fringe group, we have operated in the most mainstream sort of way. We've held 4 international conferences in South Africa, the Yukon, Washington, and London, with numerous legends as our speakers. The Mr. Gold of South Africa, Peter George, the Mr. Gold of the US, Jim Sinclair, Hugo Salinas Price, Mr. Silver of Mexico, and legends from Canada such as John Emery and Eric Sprott. We have been to Washington many times. We met with the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, James Saxon of the Joint Economic Committee, Spencer Backus, the Monetary Committee, Ron Paul, etc. But one of the fun things we did was sue the Fed. And I get a kick out of looking at this picture because they sent us a check for $2,870 for attorney fees for illegally withholding information from us. So you won't see too many of those. The one thing we are not is a so-called conspiracy group. We are a fact-finding organization and have been collecting evidence on the gold price suppression scheme, which includes silver, for more than 15 years. This is not to denigrate conspiracy theories. It is the way the rich and powerful do business, and use that word to marginalize those who attempt to expose them. Facts are facts. Price-fixing cases are conspiracies, and the Justice Department in the late 1990s said we had an epidemic when they were prosecuting Samsung for such doings. Enron was voted the most innovative company in America for 5 years in a row by Fortune magazine, yet it was a conspiracy of the highest order. Does Madoff sound familiar? J.P. Morgan was fined over $2 billion for its role in the Madoff Ponzi scheme conspiracy scandal. The as of August of last year, the Department of Justice had 8 ongoing investigations into J.P. Morgan, which is the Fed's bank and plays a leading role in the manipulation of the silver market. The LIBOR interest rate scandal in London was a giant conspiracy among banks. Michael Lewis's book, Flash Boys, has been the center of attention of late about market rigging. And the 5 banks in the London gold fix are involved in lawsuits over allegations of price manipulation, which are all about conspiracies. But all of them are pikers compared to the gold silver price suppression scheme, the biggest conspiracy of them all. My goal here today is to emphasize a few points about this issue, which is going to make a major impact on the world scene in the years ahead. 1, that the gold-silver prices are manipulated and why it is so important to know what God knows. 2, explain why it will be the biggest financial scandal in U.S. history and what it means for Americans down the road. And 3, how this suppression scheme is likely to play out and how it can affect your investment portfolios. On the first point, there is so much evidence collected by GATA over the past 15 years that if you could see it all like a jury in a murder trial, you would easily come up with a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and condemn the murderer to death. Part of that 15 years worth of evidence are documents from the IMF, BIS, and exchange stabilization funds which reveal their abilities and intention to intervene in the gold market. And then there's Alan Greenspan's famous quote that central banks shall lease gold in increasing quantities should the price rise, and that's just what they've done since 1998. The damning documents are all there, and they can be found at the GATA website. But anecdotally, and to bring this point home, how many of you believe a weak dollar, higher oil prices, and quantitative easing are bullish for the gold price? Got hands? I mean, are those factors hit home? Well, the last QE began in September of 2012. On October 8, 2012, crude oil is $89.72 per barrel. It has risen to 103 today. The euro is 1.2975. It has risen to 1.3650. The Dow is 13,584. It has risen to an all-time high around 16,670. But gold has collapsed from 1,700, that area, 1,790 to 1,250 bucks, while silver is below $19 an ounce. No one back in October of 2012, appreciating what other financial markets would do, would have predicted the gold-silver price suffocations. This is how egregious the manipulation has been. Please keep the big picture in mind because it leads to a key to understanding what is to come. The gold-silver prices have been forced down to artificially low prices. These low prices will not stand. If the price of gold had just kept up with inflation, today it would be double the price. This is the sort of tide the gold cartel has thrown at gold. What is so pitiful is that they are so obvious in what they do, utilizing the same maneuvers over and over again, ones that you can easily observe on a daily basis. Among them, the London traders go to work and they knock down the price around 3 a.m. New York time all the time. They sell around U.S. economic news, such as a U.S. jobs report or Fed speak. They take back all gains surrounding any international crisis. Time and time again, you see them stop the market at up 1% on the day. They eliminate any budding excitement over the price action and prevent follow-through rallies after a major update. They lower the margin requirements as a signal they're going to bomb the markets. The COMEX margin requirements, it's happened the last 5 out of the 6 times, with the last one being this past Tuesday. They often indicate what they're going to do in the gold market by hitting silver first. And most importantly of late, they are constantly hitting the market like no other market with these flash crash attacks. The biggest one was in April of last year, in which between a Friday and a Monday, they hit the market with 200 tons, dropping the price $200 for no reason. When you see this sort of redundant absurdity so often, the manipulation of the price manipulation scheme becomes clear. It is simple to appreciate, but you know, the main thing to keep in mind, and have some fun with it, I have a little shout out here. I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, It's probably a duck. Yes, it's a duck. And the thing to keep in mind is when you've ever had something positive from Wall Street or about gold from the financial market press about what sharply rising gold price is all about. Never. They are always negative. The comments are always about too much inflation, bad news for the dollar, or a reflection on a lack of confidence in the system for some reason. It is bad for business for the Wall Street bankers and bad for incumbent politicians, which is why gold is so hated by them. Like it or not, gold is almost universally viewed as a barometer or thermometer of how copacetic everything is in the financial market universe. The problem is the gold cartel has made the thermometer dysfunctional. It's not working. How would you like to go to a doctor when sick and have him take your temperature with a thermometer that says it's normal when it's really 105 degrees? What do you think that could lead to without proper medication? Gotta placed a $264,000 ad in the Wall Street Journal on January 31st, 2008, a couple of months before the financial crisis kicked in that year. In that ad, we said, surreptitious market manipulation is leading the world to disaster. We want to expose it and stop it. Well, as you all know subsequently what happened that year, just a couple of months after our ad, but we sure didn't stop the gold rigging operations. Since then, all the QE efforts and acknowledged manipulated low interest rates in the U.S. have done much to send stock markets higher and revitalizing real estate prices. But nothing has been done, or little, to correct many of the ills which caused the 2008 fiasco in the first place. And many of the middle class in our country is falling farther behind as far as their standard of living is concerned. If gold were allowed to be traded freely, it would be acting as a certain restraint. And yes, there would be some short-term pain, but it would prevent more market chaos that some of us see coming, which will be much worse than 2008. Which leads us to why gold will be at the center of the storm that lies ahead. The United States has led the gold price suppression scheme and probably has little physical gold left in reserves of our own, with most of it swapped with other countries and sold. Yet how would anyone know? There hasn't been an audit. Think about this. Since 1955, a legitimate one. It makes no sense. What does the Federal Reserve not allow? And the big thing is going to be, and the tell of the whole thing is, why are they so secretive? Well, as far as God is concerned, they would not allow 13 documents to be released about an asset, our gold, 8,133.5 tons, that is supposedly just sitting in our vaults. Makes no sense. As my colleague Chris Powell says, the U.S. would rather reveal our nuclear secrets than our gold secrets. It is that big a deal, and they have made it that way. Which brings us back to the title in our ad, Anyone Seen Our Gold? For that matter, anyone seen Germany's gold? There has been an uproar of late that only 5 tons was returned to them last year out of an expected 300 tons by 2020. Not only do we believe much of our gold is gone, but so is much of the 20,000 tons of gold supposedly held by other central banks. There are additional growing signs the gold cartel is feeling pressure and is concerned about what lies ahead. In addition to those lawsuits about illegal manipulation around the London gold fix, Deutsche Bank is withdrawing from that fix. Barclays Bank just paid a $44 million fine for its role in an illegal mini-puke operation around the fix. The silver fix is disbanding in August. But most telling is a subtle comment made a couple of weeks ago by the European central banks about their 4th central bank gold agreement. They said the signatories will continue to coordinate their gold transactions so as to avoid market disturbances. First of all, it's a big deal because that's what God has been saying for 15 years. They are coordinating their gold transactions. And they issued the statement 3 months ahead of schedule. Why? Because they know the trouble that is coming, and these bureaucrats are going to be exposed and want to be on record as saying, well, that's what we said we were doing all along. And I told you so sort of thing when all heck breaks loose and defaults on gold deliveries appear, and there was a realization Much of the central bank gold is gone. None of these bureaucrats want to be the one left holding the bag and have the finger pointed at them. Even in terms of those concerns, you've got the Austrians now sending a committee to England to check on their gold reserves, and President Putin of Russia has made a big stink the other day in St. Petersburg about the same thing. So something is really starting to get out there. The scandal will explode onto the scene when the gold market blows up. As the gold cartel runs out of enough supply to carry on, precious metal prices are going bonkers, markets go into collapse, and the public's demand to know what happened as their standard of living deteriorates even further. Which takes us to other aspects of the scandal. The U.S. public will find out we don't have a free press in America, nor free markets, which includes the rigging of the U.S. stock market by the plunge protection team and the counterparty risk management policy group, which is Wall Street based. And if you want to have something that you'll really understand what's going on, look that term up. Not too many people know about it. And free press? I was on CNBC in February of 1999, right after GATA was formed. And once they heard what I had to say on behalf of GATA, I've been banned ever since. It's the truth. The Bloomberg reporter, gold reporter, Claudia Carpenter in London, been there doing this as long as I have, said she is forbidden to mention GATA. The same is pretty much true with Reuters and Wall Street Journal, despite our ad. And a New York Times reporter, just 2 weeks ago, going back and forth with my colleague Chris Powell, and he was all excited. He came back to him, and the guy knows we're right. He said, Bill, my editor said it's too sensitive to discuss. It's too sensitive? You mean we are so right about the implications if known, and they're so horrific? As in that favorite line in A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. Mark my words. Down the road, the U.S. public will demand answers how we could have ended up so much like the communists when it comes to free markets and a free press, after opposing them for so long. How ironic it is that the Chinese, who are consuming 4/5 of the gold coming out of the mines in the world, are putting a monkey wrench in this gold cartel's plans. As far as point number 3 is concerned, and your investment portfolio, this is the way I see it, and we'll see how it plays out. In 2005, at our Gold Rush 21 conference in the Yukon, with the price of gold at $436, it was my mention back then that it would take 3,000 to 5,000 gold to clear the market. There's no change in that prediction. In attendance at that conference was a guy named Andrei Bykov. Came out of nowhere, all the way in the middle of nowhere, up in Dawson City in the Yukon. Said it was his favorite conference he was ever at. The gold price was dead. 2 days later, it started to go nuts. It went up for the next 9 months. And 2 months after that, President Putin was out there holding this gold bar. The Russians know what GATA knows. And they said Andre came to our conference in London and still has his ears open. And by the way, the Chinese know what GATA knows. I know this for a fact because of certain State Department communiques, and I've had 3 conference calls with the Chinese Investment Corporation, which is one of their 2 sovereign wealth funds. As far as silver goes, I'm a big Eric Sprott fan of Sprott Asset Management in Toronto, and his colleague Rick Rule will be speaking later. And Eric was our keynote speaker in London, and the best supply-demand guy I've ever come across. Well, I had to put T. Boone Pickens up there. But he's made a fortune with his assessments, and I have held him in the highest regard. And he constantly talks about these days about silver going to $100 at least in the not-too-distant future. And it's liable to be much more volatile than gold because of what J.P. Morgan has done to suppress the price. As far as the gold-silver shares are concerned, they've been a nightmare for years now. How much longer this nightmare can go on is hard to figure, but you can take this one to the bank. The general investing public can't even spell gold and silver shares, and they weren't there when they were roaring years ago. But before it's all over, they will come our way, And you're going to have a mania in the shares that's going to be bigger than the internet stocks. I know I thought it would come by now, but it was put off, which means it'll be that much bigger. Returns in these stocks at these depressed price levels, which are historic, will produce 10 to 40 baggers for those willing to stay in there or get on board. The longer the gold cartels plays their foolish game, the bigger the returns. It has been a pleasure being here, and I look forward to chatting with some of you at the dinner tonight. For those of you who would like to know about us, you can go to gada.org, sign up for a free week, a free mailing, or go to my website, La Metropole Cafe, and sign up for a 2-week free trial. Thank you very much.